Annie, I want to share a story with you of what a youth director of a church told. He said there was a young man in his congregation whose parents wanted to go away for the weekend. Well, they were sure that their teenage son was mature enough to stay alone, but they set a list of rules for him to follow, and he assured them he would follow them faithfully. So they packed their bags and off they went for the weekend. Well, that evening, a few of the boy's friends decided they would stop by with beer. Now, the boy knew he shouldn't let the friends in, especially with the booze, but they were his friends, and he had everything under control, right? So he let them in, and he was tempted to have one beer with his friends, and then a second beer, and then more. He didn't know exactly how it happened, but he found himself in a stolen vehicle, cruising through town, speeding, laughing, giggling, having a great time until they were pulled over by the police. Well, he was sent to jail, and he asked them to call the youth director at his church. The youth director came and talked with the boy, and after talking with him, the youth director called the boy's parents. Well, of course, they were upset and said they would come home right away. Now, he was in big trouble, right? Have you ever done something wrong and then been caught doing it? Of course you have. We all have. And as the young man fell short of his parents' expectations, we often fall short of God's expectations of us too. Now, God gives us rules to live by. In Deuteronomy, we find him saying, "You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not get false witness against your neighbor, and you shall not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor." Now, Jesus condensed this some for us in Matthew, and he said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." Even with these rules that we have to live by and should have a really good life, we can't keep them all. We try to, I'm sure, but we fail every single day. We may tell ourselves that we're really good people, that the sins we commit are sort of minor. They don't really mean that much. We haven't committed any major sins. Certainly we haven't stolen a car, but God says that all sin displeases him. He hates it. St. Paul says that we are all sinners and we all fall short of God's standards. And if we say we haven't sinned, then we're liars. He also said that when he wants to do something right, he does it. He doesn't. And then when he doesn't want to do something wrong, that's what he seems to do. And I can certainly relate to that, can't you? I often say, "What were you thinking? Why did you say that? Why did you do that? Why didn't you do that?" We all fall short of God's standards. It's sort of overwhelming, isn't it, that we can become discouraged and burdened down with this sin or this guilt for not keeping the rules that God has given us, trying not to sin. And we may even be afraid to die to face God's judgment. Well, the youth director's story continues. Excuse me. The boy anxiously waited for his father to come. He was ridden with guilt and with fear, and he had failed his father. The youth director tried to console him to no avail, and finally just sat and waited with him for his father to come. They finally heard footsteps hurrying down the corridor, and the father was led into the room. He saw his son sitting there, head bent, tears streaming. The youth director was over in the corner. He observed what the father did. And the father said, "Son." And the boy looked up. And the father said, I love you. And he went over to the boy. He put his arms around him and he hugged him. God looks into our hearts. He sees our guilt and our sorrow over not following his rules, over messing up. And we do that every single day. We deserve his punishment and his wrath, but he's our Father. So he took all of the things that we do wrong and put them on the shoulders of Jesus. And Jesus took them to the cross, and he died there for them. So that we can approach our Father and say to him how sorry we are that we have failed to do the right thing, and ask his forgiveness and receive it. The end of the youth director's story is that the father paid the fine, the boy was released. But the boy still had consequences that he had to pay for his bad decisions and his actions. But the father was there to help him and support him. We too may have lasting consequences because of our past bad choices, bad decisions, bad actions. But God is faithful. He will always be there to help us, to support us, to walk with us through those consequences, whatever they may be. Amen.